Hello, I'm Agir Stringaris. I'm the author of Chapter 28, The Use of Structured Interviews, Rating Scales and Observational Methods in Clinical Settings. We talk about a lot of things in that chapter, but what I wanted to touch upon briefly in this video is thinking about how we as clinicians might want to organize our services in relation to the measures we collect. So I like to think of a clinical service in that regard as a funnel, and a funnel with a number of outputs, if you can depict that. So there's lots of people being referred to a service, and there's then a bit of, if you like, filtering that is going on, and people are funneled to different places. They might not come to the service, or they might, and those are the kind of outputs at the end, they might be funneled to different treatments. So if you think of this process and start at the top, what you want at the top is two things. One is to make sure that you have a screening instrument that is sensitive enough, right, to pick up the psychopathology, the problem that you're interested in. Obviously you will have that from the referrer as well. The referrer will say, oh, this young person has depression, would you mind seeing them? And they would, and then you would have a depression measure and just check, and that should be a very sensitive depression measure. But there's another important thing, which is at an early stage, you want to make sure that you also screen for all sorts of other things that might be present. And I would say, very bluntly, we should always screen for the things that we are not that good at as a service. So if you are a service for anxiety and depression, you may be less good at picking up neurodevelopmental problems. So screening for them, screening for ADHD, for example, is even more important than in a service that also specializes in ADHD. You don't want to miss out things, important comorbidities that could impact not only diagnostic decisions but treatment down the line. So that's one thing. So for that purpose, you would want to have a broad measure of psychopathology, such as the Strengths and Difficulties questionnaire, for example. It also depends on the age a little bit. Right at the beginning, maybe even before people come to your service, right? And you'll want to have alongside that whatever your measure is that you're going to screen with for the psychopathology that is relevant to your clinic. You maybe, if you have a generic clinic, then you don't necessarily need that. You could just go for the broadband measure. At the next stage, once the young person, the patient is at your clinic, you'll want to make sure that you interview, and that's going to be very important. So you will do your usual clinical interview. You may want to have asked people to do something like the Development and Wellbeing Assessment, the DOBA, or some other instrument, structured instrument, before they see you. Again, this will save you time, because you can see what they score highly on, and then you can kind of hone in on that. And again, this helps you make sure that you don't miss out things. Now, going further down, if you are particularly interested, if you discover that there is a depression, right, and then you want to kind of hone into that, you may want to use depression in this particular instance, or anxiety or ADHD specific measures. Like in depression, you may want to use the CDRS. So in anxiety, the MASK. There are specific measures to that particular problem. That now is not so much for the diagnostic process; it's more for having kind of a good baseline measure that you will then use for treatment. This is the place where, depending on the problem you're dealing with, you may want to use observational measures as well. It's obvious that in childhood oppositional disorder, these are very useful. So the in-depth measures, be it rating scales, clinician rating scales, for example, like the CDRS, or observational measures, which are quite time-consuming. These you do with the people who are selected to go on for treatment, right? And you do that so as to quantify, as I said, but also in order to get a deep understanding, a nuanced understanding of the subtleties of the problem. to move beyond the diagnostic label and just hear from the person what is going on in the particular areas. I should say here that typically all the development of measures and the selection of measures are done top down, i.e. we as clinicians or the researchers in the case of development drive the process. There's a movement now to have patient involvement, and it is very useful to do this for a number of reasons. The most obvious one is that you will hear things and learn things from young people and their parents that could improve the care, the delivery of care you do, and you will have also more buy-in. So there's both practical and of course kind of ethical reasons to want to involve stakeholders in the process. It's not always easy because there's only a certain number of measures that have been developed, if you like, the old way, and you don't have infinite time, of course, but it is probably time worth invested. So this is my short video on chapter 28. Thanks very much for reading it, for watching this video.